The important message that we're trying to get out is that the Olmstead Plan is the voice of persons with disabilities. We think it says many things that people with disabilities have been trying to say themselves for a number of years. The Olmstead Plan emphasizes the most integrated setting, and we think Minnesota has a lot of room to improve in that area.
Minnesota is in transition, a period of evolution that will help some citizens become true members of the community with new freedom of choice. The state is implementing its Olmstead Plan, setting forth basic principles to ensure people with disabilities enjoy the full range of freedoms and choices of which they are capable. Named for a U.S. Supreme Court decision involving the state of Georgia, the order is in some respects a new Bill of Rights for people with disabilities. Minnesota Governor Mark Dayton has extended the life of the state's Olmstead Sub-Cabinet, which is charged with guiding the introduction of these new policies in state government and elsewhere. Mary Ellen Mayo, the president of ARC Minnesota, says the Olmstead Plan is important and people need to know their rights.
As president, I hope to get the word out. And when the word gets out and parents start having the conversations with people, knowing what their rights are, knowing what their responsibilities are, because we can't just be demanding people and saying, I want this and this, but being able to work as a team with our case managers, with the legislature to get the money, we can make this all a better community for everyone and strengthen the community because people will be more involved and happier with what they're doing.
There is much to be done to make the system person-centered, to give individuals with disabilities a much greater role in making choices, including where one lives, their work and other contributions, and caregivers as appropriate. One individual who has benefited from a more person-centered approach is Roberta Blomster, who now does office work full-time for the federal government.
I'm really loving it. I, made great friends over there and continue to do so because, there's, like people leaving, people coming in. I do office work, so the letters that people get in the mail, I do that. I pull out old files and some computer work too, and yeah, I get paid for it.
It's about being able to have some control over your life, even if it just relates to basic choices of daily living. This could build on a program already started in Minnesota, consumer-directed community supports.
For a number of years, some Minnesotans with disabilities have had a program called consumer-directed community supports, and that has given them their own annual budget. It's told them what they can and can't spend dollars on. They've worked with the fiscal support entity to account for those dollars, but then they've had great flexibility in what they can spend that money on to support them. We think now with the strength of the Olmstead Plan behind us that we can make that program more accessible to thousands and thousands more persons with disabilities. The ARC feels strongly that if people with disabilities have control over the budgets and the resources available to them, great things can happen.
Several years ago in Minnesota, a major decision was issued by U.S. District Court Judge Donovan Frank in a case brought by the parents of 3 young people with disabilities who had suffered physical abuse in state institutions. The guiding principles bar the use of some types of restraint, including one described by self-advocate Carrie Varner of Mankato.
Called a prone restraint, where someone is literally put on the ground, and depending on what type of prone restraint you're using, it could be shackles, it could be holding someone down under, by their feet and in their arms, and it's very abusive.
The judge's order is known as the Jensen Settlement Agreement.
The Jensen settlement has had a profound impact on services and supports for persons with disabilities. It's unfortunate that we had to go through the situation in which over 340 people were abused in a state-operated program, but as a result of that settlement 3 years ago, some very profound changes are occurring in our service system, and we have the federal courts that are following along and making sure that we're headed in the right direction. And so we've had a community process in which stakeholders have had a lot of input into the development of the Olmstead Plan, and now we need to take advantage of the opportunities that that's presenting to really make sure that the change does happen.
The directions of both the Jensen Settlement Agreement and Minnesota's Olmstead Plan are being implemented statewide. Gene Bender of ARC is often found at the Capitol, interacting with lawmakers about the concerns of people with disabilities and the policies that will benefit them. As the mother of several children, she and her husband look for the best paths for them to follow for the future. For two of them, it would be the road to college and beyond, but for one son, it would be a different course.
For my oldest son, it was what will make his life happy, what does he want to do, what kind of programs are out there and are they appropriate for him. We used that person-centered planning process and thinking about him and his strengths and his wants and needs before we looked at what the service is. So we developed that plan, and out of that came an individualized program. He's out in the community 2 or 3 times a day, every day of the week. Sometimes it's volunteer work, sometimes it's an activity he enjoys, sometimes it's exercise and going to the local community center.
This person-centered approach is a two-way education process, where the support staff may even learn more if they work at it.
One is letting our children teach us. I think that's really, really important. And so exposing yourself to a lot of different people and a lot of different situations, and if something doesn't seem right, it's worth talking with people about. I think legislative action is very important, because no matter what the Olmstead decision says or whatever any regulations say, if the states don't have the money to implement the programs and to implement the opportunities that might be good for folks with disabilities, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be a big dedication to it, but staying in touch with your legislators. They really don't know what life is like for those of us with people with disabilities and the families unless we tell them.
A major theme of the Olmstead Plan is to help people with disabilities to be part of the larger community in terms of housing, day-to-day living, and for employment. Where to live is one question, and Jean Bender and her family came up with one answer.
We also bought a duplex and all moved in one half, and then we have a 10-year, we're about 3 years into a 10-year plan to have us totally living in one half while he is supported in his half, but we're there to support him through the transition.
The Olmstead Plan commits the state of Minnesota to moving forward in specific areas that will impact the lives of people with disabilities. From employment opportunities to housing, personal care, and individual choices, Steve Larson sees forward movement coming in many areas of life.
There'll be a lot of innovation in how people are supporting themselves. They'll be able to hire people that will help them develop relationships and make sure they're maximizing the use of natural supports. We think that'll help people get employment when they have control over what's happening and can achieve the goals that they've set for themselves. Accomplish those dreams that all of us have.
The Olmstead Plan, a blueprint, a directive for a brighter future for Minnesotans with disabilities and their families.